Philolaus. In ancient Greece, where philosophy flourished and thinkers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle dominated the intellectual scene, there was one man who dared to challenge the great Pythagoras himself. His name? Philolaus. Imagine it, a young mathematician staring down the towering legacy of his master, bravely declaring that the universe is not just about perfect numbers, but an interplay of harmony, opposites, and fire at the center of it all. Bold? Definitely. Groundbreaking? Without. But what drove Philolaus to risk shaking up the Pythagorean world? What cosmic secrets did he uncover that made him believe he was right? So right, in fact, that his theories would influence not only the future of mathematics, but even the structure of the universe itself. Let's dive into the story of Philolaus, a man who stepped out of the shadow of Pythagoras and left a legacy that's far too often overlooked. Buckle up, because this tale is filled with cosmic twists, a little drama, and a whole lot of math. Historical context. Philolaus lived during an exciting time in ancient Greece, the 5th century BCE, when philosophy was moving from mythological explanations toward rational, logical inquiry. This was the age when people began to ask, what really makes the universe tick? It was a shift from stories of gods battling in the skies to an understanding that the cosmos might in fact be a beautifully ordered system, governed by principles humans could uncover. Enter Pythagoras. Born around 570 BCE, this man was a mathematician and philosopher whose ideas about numbers revolutionized the way people thought. Pythagoras didn't just believe that numbers were tools for counting things. He believed that numbers were the very foundation of reality. He taught that the universe was built on mathematical relationships, and that everything, from music to the movement of stars, could be explained by numbers. It's no wonder he became the head of a devoted group of followers known as the Pythagoreans, who lived by strict rules that blended science, spirituality, and ethics. Now let's picture Philolaus stepping. The intellectual air was thick with ideas, and yet, even as a student in Pythagoras' school, Philolaus wasn't content with just accepting what his master had taught. In fact, as he listened to the grand theories of harmony and numbers, he felt a nagging question. Could the universe really be as simple as Pythagoras made it seem? Was there something more, something deeper? It wasn't just an exciting time in terms of ideas. It was also a period when Greek cities like Croton, where Pythagoras' school was located, became hubs of philosophical thought. Competing ideas were everywhere. Rival schools debated, and philosophers refined their thinking by challenging EA. For Philolaus, it was the perfect environment to spark a bit of rebellion. By the time Philolaus began formulating his own theories, Greek thought was already becoming a battlefield of ideas, with thinkers like Anaximander and Thales trying to explain the cosmos with water, air, or something even more abstract. But Philolaus wasn't just another voice in the debate. He was about to turn some Pythagorean ideas upside down. Ready for the drama? Let's move into Philolaus's break from tradition and how he carved his own intellectual path. Life and works of Pythagoras. To understand Philolaus, we first need to delve into the life of Pythagoras, the towering figure who cast such a long shadow over ancient Greek thought. Born around 570 BCE on the island of Samos, Pythagoras was a man of deep intellect and curiosity. He traveled extensively, studying in Egypt, Babylon, and possibly even India, absorbing knowledge from different cultures before returning to Greece to found his famous school. Now, Pythagoras wasn't just interested in math. He believed that numbers weren't just tools, but fundamental truths of the universe. He's best known for his theorem, yes, the one with triangles, but his teachings went far beyond geometry. Pythagoras believed that the entire cosmos was built on numbers and harmony, that there was a mathematical order to everything, from the stars in the sky to the notes in a musical scale. His school in Croton wasn't just a place to learn math. It was almost a cult, complete with secret rituals, strict rules, and a belief in the transmigration of souls. Yes, that's right. Pythagoreans believed that after death, souls could reincarnate into other living beings, which is why they were vegetarians. You never know if your dinner might be Uncle Demetrius reincarnated as a chicken. Pythagoras' followers lived by a strict code, emphasizing purity of both body and mind. They saw numbers as divine and mathematics as a pathway to understanding the spiritual order of the universe. The famed Pythagorean harmony of the spheres is a perfect example. Pythagoras theorized that the planets moved in perfect orbits that were related by harmonious musical ratios. In short, the universe was one big, beautiful symphony of numbers. Sounds neat, right? But there was a downside to this rigid worldview. Pythagoras' teachings, though innovative, became dogma. The Pythagorean brotherhood was secretive and hierarchical, which meant dissent wasn't exactly encouraged. And this is where Philolaus began to stir the pot. Philolaus was drawn to Pythagoras' teachings, particularly the idea that numbers were the key to understanding the universe. But as he studied, he began to see cracks in Pythagoras' grand vision. Could numbers really explain everything? Was there more to the cosmos than just harmony and order? These questions would lead Philolaus to break with his teacher in a big way. Let's get into what set Philolaus apart from his master, and how his own revolutionary ideas started shaking things up in the world of Pythagorean philosophy. The philosophy of Philolaus may have started as a disciple of Pythagoras, but it didn't take long for him to carve his own intellectual path. While he shared Pythagoras' fascination with numbers and harmony, he took these ideas and ran with them, straight into new and radical territory. Where Pythagoras viewed numbers as mystical and almost divine, Philolaus was much more interested in how numbers interacted with the physical world, not just the metaphysical one. One of Philolaus's most intriguing ideas was his concept of harmony. For Pythagoras, harmony was something abstract, a mathematical principle that explained why music sounded good or why planets moved in perfect orbits. But Philolaus took it a step further. He believed that harmony wasn't just a metaphor for balance, it was the very glue that held the universe together. In his mind, harmony was the unifying force between opposites, like hot and cold, light and dark, male and female. He saw the universe as a balancing act, with everything in a constant state of tension, and harmony was the force keeping it all from flying apart. Sounds kind of like cosmic yoga, right? Where things really get interesting is in Philolaus's ideas about the structure of the cosmos itself. Now, at the time, most people believed in a geocentric universe, the idea that the Earth was the center of everything, and the sun, moon, and stars revolved around it. Pythagoras didn't challenge this directly, but Philolaus? Oh, he had thoughts. Philolaus proposed that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe at all. In fact, he argued that there was a central fire at the heart of the cosmos, and everything, including the Earth, the sun, and all the planets, revolved around this unseen fire. The Earth wasn't even stationary. It spun on its own axis as it orbited the central fire. Now, before you get too excited, this wasn't quite the heliocentric model that Copernicus would propose 1,500 years later. The central fire wasn't the sun. In fact, Philolaus thought the sun was just a reflection of this fire, a giant mirror bouncing its light back to us. But still, his idea that the Earth wasn't the center of everything was a huge departure from the accepted wisdom of his time. It was a wild, revolutionary thought, a glimpse of the modern scientific world peeking through the ancient veil of mysticism. Philolaus' model didn't catch on right away, let's be honest. Revolutionizing the way people think about the universe is a tough sell. But his willingness to challenge the status quo, to look at the cosmos not as something fixed and unchanging, but as a dynamic, rotating system, set the stage for future thinkers like Copernicus and Kepler. And yet, despite these bold ideas, Philolaus' name has often been lost in the shuffle of history. Maybe it's because his ideas were overshadowed by his more famous mentor. Maybe it's because his writings, unlike those of later philosophers, didn't survive the centuries. But there's no denying that his contributions were groundbreaking. So what made Philolaus such a trailblazer? Part of it was his willingness to ask big questions, the kind of questions that challenge even the most deeply held beliefs. But another part of it was his unique approach to numbers and cosmology. Where Pythagoras saw numbers as sacred and untouchable, Philolaus saw them as tools to help us understand not just the heavens, but the very nature of existence. In the next section, we'll dive deeper into his mathematical contributions and how they changed the game. Trust me, this guy knew his numbers. Mathematical contributions of Philolaus. Now, let's get into Philolaus' mathematical contributions, the part where his deep fascination with numbers really shines. If you thought Pythagoras had the monopoly on number theory, you're in for a surprise. Philolaus took those foundational ideas and added his own twist, exploring concepts that would influence future generations of mathematicians and philosophers. For starters, Philolaus shared Pythagoras' belief that numbers were the essence of all things. But while Pythagoras seemed content with declaring that all is number, Philolaus wanted to know more about how those numbers actually worked in the real world. For him, numbers weren't just abstract entities. They were practical, living forces that governed everything, from the structure of the cosmos to the strings on a lyre. One of Philolaus' most significant contributions was his study of proportions. He recognized that relationships between numbers could be expressed through ratios, and these ratios were not only mathematical, but could explain natural phenomena. If you've ever tried to figure out why certain musical notes sound harmonious together, Philolaus was especially obsessed with the idea of harmonic intervals, the numerical ratios that correspond to musical notes. He figured out that the relationship between musical notes could be broken down into simple ratios: 2-1 for the octave, 3-2 for the perfect fifth, and 4-3 for the perfect fourth. These discoveries weren't just useful for composing music. They were profound insights into how nature itself operates in harmonious balance. Music, for Philolaus, wasn't just sound. It was the oadi. The stars, the planets, the elements, all of them were playing along to the same cosmic tune. Now, if you're thinking, wait, that sounds a little bit like the music of the spheres, you're absolutely right. The idea that celestial bodies emit their own form of music, imperceptible to the human ear, but perfectly harmonious, was a core belief of the Pythagorean school. Philolaus helped develop this concept further, weaving it into his ideas about how the universe was structured. It's like the ultimate playlist, where the planets are the musicians and the cosmos is the concert hall. Philolaus also contributed to what might be called the theory of limits. He believed that the universe is composed of both limit, what is measurable and defined, and the unlimited, what is vast and boundless. Think of it like this: numbers, ratios, and harmonies represent the limits. They're precise, knowable, and controllable. But the universe itself, with its endless space and countless stars, represents the unlimited, something we can observe but never fully grasp. Philolaus was among the first to use mathematics to explain this tension between the finite and infinite, a concept that would later become a cornerstone of mathematical and philosophical thought. Interestingly, While Philolaus embraced the idea of numbers as the fundamental building blocks of the universe, he didn't shy away from the practical side of math. He saw its applications in everything from architecture to politics. It's like he was saying, hey, numbers aren't just for ivory tower philosophers, they're for everyone. And with his work on proportions and harmony, he provided a bridge between the abstract and the everyday, a balance between theory and practice. Now, did Philolaus invent everything he talked about? Not exactly, but he certainly built on the work of those who came before him, and in some cases, he pushed the boundaries further than even Pythagoras had dared. He took the mystical and metaphysical aspects of numbers and found ways to apply them to the physical world. His study of proportions, harmony, and limits set the stage for later advancements in fields as diverse as music theory, astronomy, and even physics. In fact, many of his ideas, especially those about the harmony of the cosmos, would deeply influence thinkers like Plato and, later, Johannes Kepler. So while Philolaus might not have invented calculus or solved Fermat's last theorem, he did help lay the groundwork for a tradition of mathematical inquiry that would echo down the centuries. In the next section, we'll take a closer look at the differences between Pythagoras and Philolaus. It's like the ancient world's version of mentor versus student, and you won't believe how differently they viewed the universe. Differences between Pythagoras and Philolaus. Pythagoras and Philolaus, mentor and student, the original dynamic duo of ancient mathematics and philosophy. But as with many great intellectual pairings, their relationship wasn't all harmonious chords and high fives. In fact, the differences between them are what make this story even more fascinating. So, let's unpack this ancient intellectual drama, shall we? On the surface, both Pythagoras and Philolaus shared a fundamental belief in the power of numbers and harmony. They both saw the universe as something that could be understood or even decoded through mathematics. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find that their approaches were quite different. Pythagoras was the original visionary, the mystic who thought numbers held divine power. For him, mathematics wasn't just a tool. It was a window into the soul of the universe, a mystical force that governed both the seen and unseen worlds. His famous line, "All is number," wasn't just a mathematical statement. It was a spiritual one. Philolaus, on the other hand, took those big, mystical ideas and gave them a more practical twist. Where Pythagoras was content with declaring that numbers were the essence of all things, Philolaus wanted to get into the specifics. How do these numbers actually explain the cosmos? What are the rules? And can we apply them beyond just metaphysical musings? If Pythagoras was more of a philosopher-mystic, Philolaus leaned towards being a cosmologist mathematician. He wanted to make sense of the universe through measurable, observable phenomena, while still keeping the harmony of numbers at the core of everything. One of the most significant differences between them lies in their approach to cosmology. Pythagoras, like many early thinkers, viewed the Earth as the center of the universe. This geocentric model fit neatly into his idea that everything revolved around an ideal, balanced harmony. But Philolaus had a different vision. He believed in a central fire, a mysterious force at the heart of the cosmos, around which all things, including the Earth, revolved. Yep, that's right. Long before Copernicus and Galileo, Philolaus was already dabbling in heliocentric, or at least non-geocentric, ideas. He didn't think the Earth was the be-all, end-all of the universe. Instead, he proposed that both the Earth and other celestial bodies were moving around a central fire. Pretty wild, right? This idea of a central fire was revolutionary for its time, and it set Philolaus apart from not only Pythagoras, but also from many other early philosophers who were clinging to a more earth-centered view of the cosmos. While Pythagoras may have introduced the idea that the universe could be understood through numerical harmony, Philolaus was the one to suggest that the universe might actually move in harmony, governed by mathematical principles. But the differences didn't stop at cosmology. Even in their treatment of numbers, Pythagoras and Philolaus had distinct viewpoints. Pythagoras was obsessed with the mystical nature of numbers. He believed that certain numbers, like the number 10, had almost magical quality. The Pythagoreans even developed an entire belief system around the tetractys, a triangular figure made up of 10 points arranged in 4 rows. This number was considered sacred, representing harmony and the structure of the universe. Philolaus, while also recognizing the importance of numbers, focused more on their practical applications. He was interested in how numbers and their relationships could be used to explain physical phenomena, especially through ratios and proportions. Where Pythagoras might have meditated on the spiritual significance of the number 10, Philolaus would have been more interested in how the ratios between numbers could explain the harmony in music or the movement of celestial bodies. For Philolaus, it wasn't enough to worship numbers. You had to show what they could do. And then there's the matter of secrecy. Pythagoras was known for running his school almost like a secret society. Only the initiated were allowed to learn the deeper truths of his philosophy. There were layers to the teachings, and students had to prove themselves before they could access the inner knowledge. Philolaus, on the other hand, was a bit more open. He wrote a book on Pythagorean philosophy, and in doing so he effectively broke the silence of the Pythagorean tradition. Some sources suggest that he was the first to publicly share Pythagorean teachings, which caused quite a stir at the time. It's like he took the Pythagorean version of the secret recipe and published it for the world to see. In summary, the differences between Pythagoras and Philolaus boil down to this. While Pythagoras was a mystic and visionary who saw numbers as the key to unlocking the spiritual and metaphysical secrets of the universe, Philolaus was more grounded, still spiritual, but with an eye on practical applications and observable phenomena. Pythagoras believed in the sacredness of numbers, while Philolaus used numbers to explain the very mechanics of the cosmos. It's the classic case of the dreamer versus the doer, the philosopher versus the scientist. Both were geniuses, but in their own very different ways. In the next section, we'll dive into the mind-bending cosmology of Philolaus and his bold theory of the universe. Spoiler: it involves fire, movement, and a whole lot of mathematical harmony. Pythagorean cosmology. Let's fire things. Welcome to Philolaus's groundbreaking cosmology, where things don't just sit around the Earth like a bunch of lazy planets. No. In Philolaus's universe, everything orbits a central fire. Forget about Earth being the center of attention. Philolaus was out here suggesting that the universe is far more dynamic than that. And yes, this was long before Galileo or Copernicus turned the world, or should we say the sun, upside down with their heliocentric models. So, what exactly is this central fire Philolaus was talking about? First off, it's not the sun. Nope. In Philolaus's model, the sun, the earth, and all the other celestial bodies revolve around a central, invisible fire that radiates energy and life throughout the universe. This fire, which he poetically referred to as the hearth of the universe, or Hestia, was the ultimate source of warmth, light, and, here's the kicker, harmony. Everything was in constant motion around this fire, perfectly balanced and governed by mathematical principles. Imagine this: the universe as a grand orchestra, where every planet, star, and celestial object moves to the beat of the cosmos, their motion defined by perfect ratios and harmonies. And at the center of it all, this invisible, fiery conductor keeping everything in time. Philolaus believed that the relationships between these celestial bodies could be expressed in mathematical terms, Mn. He thought that just as we find harmony in music, there is harmony in the heavens, and this harmony is orchestrated by the central fire, Now, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't Philolaus just say the sun was the center? Great question. The sun, in Philolaus's model, was just one of the celestial bodies that orbits the central fire. Its job wasn't to be the big boss, but to reflect the fire's light and warmth onto the earth. Essentially, the sun was like the universe's giant cosmic mirror, doing its part to spread the love. He didn't stop there, though. Philolaus also suggested that the moon, the stars, and the planets were all orbiting this central fire, each following its own harmonious path. But there's more to this model than just orbits and fire. Philolaus introduced the concept of the counter-Earth, an invisible planet that was also revolving around the central fire, opposite the Earth. Yes, you read that right. A mysterious planet hidden from view because it was always on the other side of the central fire. The purpose of this counter-Earth wasn't just for fun. It helped Philolaus explain why we couldn't see the central fire directly. Spoiler alert, it was always blocked by this invisible planet. While modern science doesn't exactly support the idea of a counter-Earth or an invisible central fire, what Philolaus was attempting to do here was revolutionary for his time. His theory wasn't just about explaining celestial mechanics. It was about bringing order, structure, and harmony to the cosmos. His universe was a place where everything was interconnected, and every movement was dictated by mathematical laws, much like a perfectly composed symphony. This focus on harmony, rooted in mathematics, echoed the broader Pythagorean belief that numbers were at the core of everything, literally everything. Whether it was music, nature, or the cosmos, it all came down to this idea that the universe itself is a harmonious, mathematically driven system would go on to inspire generations of philosophers and astronomers, most notably Plato and later Kepler. In fact, Kepler's famous laws of planetary motion, which mathematically described the elliptical orbits of planets, are deeply influenced by this Pythagorean concept of harmony. While Kepler traded Philolaus's fire for the sun, the spirit of Philolaus's vision, this mathematically ordered cosmos, remains at the he. So, why does this matter? Well, in a world where most people believed the Earth was at the center of the universe, Philolaus dared to challenge that idea. His central fire model suggested that maybe, just maybe, we weren't the focal point of all creation. And although his model wasn't entirely accurate by today's standards, it was a critical stepping stone toward our eventual understanding of the universe. Philolaus's cosmology was also a testament to the power of imagination in science and Philly. Sure, we can laugh now at the idea of an invisible counter-Earth or a central fire hidden in the universe, but his willingness to think beyond the accepted norms opened the door for future thinkers to continue pushing the boundaries. And that, my friends, is the real fire at the heart of Philolaus's legacy. As we wrap up this section on his cosmology, let's reflect on one key takeaway. Sometimes, it takes a little imagination, and maybe even a central fire or two, to push the boundaries of knowledge. Philolaus's ideas might not have been the final word on the universe, but they helped light the path toward a deeper understanding of the cosmos. Next up, we'll take a look at how Philolaus influenced the big names of later generations, from Plato to Copernicus and beyond. Ready to dive into the ripple effects of this ancient thinker's bold ideas. Influence of Philolaus on later thinkers. Philolaus's ideas might not have earned him top billing in the history of philosophy and science, but make no mistake, his influence rippled through the ages like a pebble tossed into a pond. You know how sometimes it's the quiet one in the back of the room who says something that everyone ends up talking about later? That's Philolaus. Let's fast forward a few hundred years to Plato, one of the biggest names in Western philosophy. Now, Plato wasn't just dabbling in abstract thought, he was also deeply intrigued by cosmology and mathematics. And who do you think helped inspire some of his thinking? You guessed it, Philolaus. Plato had a soft spot for Pythagorean thought, and it's clear that he picked up on some of the ideas floating around Philolaus's camp. In fact, Plato's famous dialogue, the Timaeus, which delves into the creation of the universe and the nature of reality, reflects many Pythagorean ideas, including the notion of a cosmos governed by mathematical harmony. The emphasis on proportions and the structure of the universe as a kind of ordered, living organism owes more than a little to Philolaus's earlier musings about numbers, harmony, and the cosmos. Remember Philolaus's belief that everything in the universe, from the stars to music, could be explained through numbers and ratios? Well, Plato took that and ran with it. He integrated these ideas into his philosophy, suggesting that the physical world is an imperfect reflection of an eternal mathematical reality, where perfect forms, governed by mathematical principles, exist. Plato's theory of forms, combined with his belief in a mathematically structured cosmos, can trace some of its roots back to the Pythagorean and Philolaic obsession with numerical harmony. But Plato wasn't the only big thinker to borrow a bit from Philolaus. Fast forward even further, and we get to Copernicus, the Renaissance astronomer who famously put the sun at the center of the universe. Sounds familiar, right? While Copernicus's heliocentric model wasn't a direct continuation of Philolaus's central fire theory, there's a clear conceptual link: the idea that Earth isn't the center of everything. Philolaus was one of the first to suggest that our planet was just one part of a larger, more complex cosmic dance, a radical notion in its time. Although Copernicus replaced Philolaus's invisible fire with the sun, the underlying principle that celestial bodies revolve around something cool. And then we have Johannes Kepler, the 17th century astronomer and mathematician, who refined the Copernican model by discovering the laws of planetary motion. Kepler was fascinated by the Pythagorean concept of harmony, and his laws, which described the elliptical orbits of planets, reflect a deep belief in the harmony of the cosmos. Kepler was chasing the same cosmic harmony that Philolaus had suggested centuries earlier, believing that the universe was ordered according to mathematical principle. Kepler's work, which laid the foundation for modern astronomy, was in many ways a continuation of Philolaus's vision, just with more precise math and, well, a better telescope. Even outside of astronomy and philosophy, Philolaus's influence can be felt in music theory. The connection between mathematics and music, something Philolaus explored in depth, would go on to shape the way musicians and theorists understand musical harmony. The idea that the intervals between notes can be explained through numerical ratios is something that persists to this day, forming the basis of Western music theory. What's fascinating is how Philolaus's ideas managed to weave their way through different fields over the centuries, even if his name didn't always get the credit. In fact, his work laid the groundwork for the eventual merging of mathematics, music, astronomy, and philosophy, a tradition that shaped Renaissance thought and beyond. So, what can we learn from this quiet giant of ancient thought? Philolaus teaches us that even if you don't get the glory, your ideas can still shape the world. His influence reminds us that sometimes the most profound changes start with a single radical idea, like putting a central fire in the middle of the universe, or connecting the harmony of the stars to the strings of a lyre. In conclusion, while Philolaus's name may not be as famous as Plato's or Copernicus's, his influence on these great thinkers and on the development of Western thought more broadly is undeniable. His cosmological theories, emphasis on mathematical harmony, and bold challenge to the Earth-centered universe set the stage for some of history's most groundbreaking intellectual advances. He may have been ahead of his time, but in the end, the world caught up with him. Next, let's take a look at the enduring legacy of Philolaus and why, despite his contributions, history hasn't been as kind to his reputation as it has been to some of his contemporaries. The legacy of Philolaus. As we wrap up this exploration of Philolaus's life and contributions, It's hard not to marvel at the way his ideas, though often overshadowed by his famous teacher Pythagoras, continue to resonate through time. Philolaus wasn't just a follower in Pythagoras' shadow. He was a bold thinker in his own right, unafraid to question established beliefs and push the boundaries of what was known about the cosmos, mathematics, and even music. So why is Philolaus still relatively unknown outside of scholarly circles? In part, history is like a spotlight. It tends to shine brightest on the most charismatic figures or those with the loudest legacies. Pythagoras, with his school of devoted followers and mystical aura, naturally drew more of that spotlight. But Philolaus's quieter revolution, his theory of the central fire, his contributions to musical harmony, and his deep belief in the mathematical structure of the universe formed the bedrock of ideas that others, from Plato to Copernicus, would later build upon. Philolaus's legacy teaches us an important lesson. Not all revolutions are loud. Some are born in the quiet calculations of a mind. He showed us that challenging the status quo doesn't always mean outright defiance. Sometimes it's about gently redirecting the current, shifting the way we see the world just enough to open new doors for future thinkers. Imagine walking through the bustling streets of ancient Croton, or perhaps sitting under the stars with Philolaus as he explains his radical ideas about the universe's structure. While others looked up and saw chaos or simplicity, Philolaus saw something more, a cosmic dance, held together by mathematical harmony, where fire, earth, and the stars all moved in a carefully ordered symphony. In the end, Philolaus's story is one of quiet brilliance. His name may not have the same weight as Pythagoras or Plato, but his ideas live on in the very fabric of the way we understand the world today. From the laws of planetary motion to the harmonies in a piece of music. He's a reminder that even if history forgets your name, the impact of your ideas can last forever. So the next time you hear about the great thinkers of the ancient world, remember Philolaus, the man who dared to see the universe not as a fixed point, but as a harmonious, ever-moving system. His influence is still with us, quietly shaping the way we explore the mysteries of existence, and reminding us that sometimes the most profound revolutions start in the mind of someone willing to see things a little differently.
By my side, intense, strong, no fear to face, nowhere to hide, intense. I subscribe to this channel, click like today, because content like this just lights my way, intense and slow.